My name is Linda. My daughter's name is Chanel. She was born on October 23rd, 1989. And somewhere between April 12th and April 14th, my daughter died of a fatal fentanyl overdose. She was 34 years old. She left behind six children, and four of those children live with me. So, my daughter, in her older life, when she was about 13 or 14 years old, she started to experiment with drugs. And it was something simple like smoking cigarettes. And I believe that's where she started, is smoking cigarettes. But it moved on from smoking cigarettes to marijuana to drinking beer. My daughter did this until she was about 15 years old, and it wasn't a lot. It was, I don't know, once every few months or something, we would catch her. It wasn't any real noticeable changes in her behavior. She just was every now and again doing it. When she got about 15 years old, she started having a relationship with this boy down the street, and his mom was the methamphetamine maker. Their house was a cooker, and we were working so hard as a neighborhood to close down that cooker. And when they have houses where they're cooking methamphetamine, sometimes they're brand new houses. They're not the beat up shacks that are out in the backyard anymore. Sometimes they're right up in your neighborhood, as this one was. And when they explode, it's very bad. So my daughter started seeing this boy that lived in this house, and he went to school with her. He was a quite striking young man. He had blonde hair, he had blue eyes, and I gather all the girls kind of wanted to have him, and he was a lucky catch. And my daughter ended up with him, and she was completely smitten and head over heels with him. So, this young man, his name was Joseph, and Joseph's mother was the methamphetamine cooker and the user. And she was probably in late stage addiction when I really look back and think about it. But her son gave my daughter methamphetamine, and that was her first intro into methamphetamine. And she was about 15 at the time, um, maybe 16. And when that happened, after her first time of trying methamphetamine, she was already delusional. And this is probably because my daughter has bipolar 1. But she she saw things that weren't there, she heard things that weren't there, and she really had a rough go at it the very first time that she used it, and we didn't even know what to do with her. The few times after that she used it, still from Joseph. One time she almost overdosed and died. They, she was in the back seat, and she was um, almost not breathing. My older daughter, Kayleen, was holding her, and we were rushing her to the emergency room. And they came, Metaflight picked her up and took her to a cardiac ICU unit. And they told us at that point that she would never walk or talk again because her central nervous system was fried. And my daughter showed them that that was not true because she walked out of that hospital. And at this point, we realized that we were in over our heads because we tried the at home method. We tried disciplining her. We tried talking to her. And we even tried the counseling route again. And what would happen is we would see her do well for a little while. And then she would go out the door, out the window, and sneak off with Joseph. And the races were on again. And when she did that, we combed the town for weeks. My husband and some of his friends were kicking in doors, jumping over fences, doing chases, doing car chases down the road, trying to get my daughter back into our care. And this became exhausting and very disruptive to everything, to our jobs and to our other two children we had at the house. So we got juvenile justice involved, and each time that my daughter ran away, I guess there was laws out there that she was breaking because she was running away or not going to school. There was something that they did, and I don't remember what they did. But each and every time that she ran away, they would put her in juvenile hall and they would keep her there for a few months at a time. We milked that until she was 18 years old. And from that time, from 15 to about 18, she was in and out of juvenile justice and in and out of long-term treatment. And predominantly we did that because we just didn't know what to do with her at home, and I thought she was going to kill herself. And if I'm going to be honest, she would have. So when she was 18, we took her from there and we moved to North Carolina. And we thought that if we got her completely away from Joseph, that would stop the whole thing. We got out here, and shortly after we got here, she popped her little thumb out and she went all the way back to California from North Carolina. She hitchhiked. She came back here again and she brought Joseph with her. And we live in a small rural town in North Carolina where there's a bunch of redneck good old boys. They ran that boy out of town. He ran with his tail between his legs, completely scared straight. And for a while, my daughter was okay because the new boyfriend that she got, which was Kirsten's dad, although he had his own issues, he wasn't using drugs. So my daughter wasn't using drugs either. But my daughter later on got married. They both relapsed and went off the wagon because they were both drug users that were abusing drugs, both of them, both her and her husband. And in the course of them being together, the abuse came back into play, and they were using drugs heavily. And that's how I ended up with Kirsten. But my daughter was able for, I don't know, I'm going to say maybe about the age of 22, or no, I'll be fair, from the age of 18 to possibly about the age of 30. My daughter was able to abuse drugs, stop and start drugs, have periods of long-term sobriety, do well, hold down a job, appear to get herself on track. And in the abuse stage, there is frequent relapses and there is frequent attempts at recovery, which my daughter had. If you're bipolar 1, one of the earmarks of it is that you have multiple failed treatments, which she did. And they say with bipolar 1 that treatment is ineffective. It doesn't work. So that's why some people can walk out of a treatment facility and not go back to using drugs, and other ones, it's like they hit the ground running. And my daughter was always the one that hit the ground running. She, when she got 30, when she was about 30 years old, that's when she started making statements like, I don't get high anymore. I used to feel normal. I can't function unless I'm using. She started making all those verbal statements that she was in addiction. And when you get into addiction, you go through more stages. You go through the early and the middle and the late stage. In the early stage of addiction, you're still trying treatment and you're still trying to control your drug use, and you still think there's some way that if you do this and do that, that you won't get out of control and you'll be able to control it. When you get about middle stage, that's when your health starts to take a beating. You're looking real rough and ragged, and your family is, you're pulling away from your family because you don't want to use in front of them because they keep confronting. When you move into the late stage of addiction, you don't even deny you're using anymore. You say, yeah, I'm high. And your family has then started to cut ties with you because they just can't do it anymore. They're exhausted. And that's where my daughter was when she died. And also one of the earmarks that's really kind of sad is they kind of give up on themselves because nothing has worked and they've tried everything.